Good afternoon, everybody. I'm your host, Crystal. This is another edition of the 9 o'clock Meltdown podcast. I do apologize if my voice sounds a little flat. I am fighting a cold. However, bygones be bygones, I have Amy Ugstad on the phone with me today. Hello.
Well, hey, Crystal. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. And now, Amy, you are a businesswoman, a bit of an entrepreneur here in Duluth. But on the flip side of all of that, you are also a very well seasoned musician.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's kind of my two worlds right now is music and work. So
Mm-hmm.
they tend to complement the other. So
Okay. In what way?
well, I think for me, I've always been into the creativity, and with my work, I do graphic design and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is being creative, problem solving, thinking of things all day long, and a lot of that transfers over to the musical world too.
Okay.
Especially, the whole wanting to create and make something new and experiment and have fun.
Yeah, yeah. And Amy, how did you get your start in music?
I actually started out as a band geek in middle school.
Okay.
So, yeah, I always wanted to play the drums. That was my whole thing from, little tiny kid, playing it, banging on pots, banging on toy drums as a little one, and my siblings, which probably they didn't appreciate that so much. But yeah, as soon as I got the opportunity to start playing in the band at school, I took up percussion, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much been it ever since.
All right. So you've always been a drummer then?
Yep. I did take piano as a kid and did that for a number of years, took piano lessons with that. But once I finally got into drumming, it's like that's been my main focus.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, Amy. Very cool. And now I've seen you in a number of bands here around town. The more recent one that I've seen you in, anyway, is Stardust Collective. You are their drummer there
Right.
too. But you actually got your start quite a bit further back kind of in the '90s.
Right. Yeah.
Well, let's reach way back there.
Yeah, we're hitting the Wayback Machine here, which
Yes.
dates me considerably. But yeah, I actually started playing around town, after college. Once I had my first real day job, and met somebody through work that just happened to be looking for a drummer. So that band was formed, and it was a kind of a three-piece called Erie Arc, and we did, all originals, and really, played out a lot around town. Had a heavy focus on recording.
Mhm.
We were together like almost 14 years, and we
Oh,
put
wow.
out, an album of original material almost, once per year, once every, 18 months.
Hmm.
Basement recordings, nothing fancy, but a lot of just good, solid rock, you know, punk influenced music. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. And what was the name of the band again?
Erie Arc.
Yuri Arc. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And how was that kind of recording time? I mean, did you guys actually go into an actual studio? I mean, was it somebody's basement? How did that come
Yeah.
together?
Yeah. Actually, our main songwriter, he had kind of a makeshift studio set up in his basement. So we learned a lot on the fly. I mean, that was my first real experience recording.
Hmm.
So a lot of trial and error. He had a lot of equipment. So just kind of working, each recording got more advanced. So that was kind of fun to learn that side of the process as well.
Hmm.
And just go through that. And we also did some other recordings over at what's now known as like the Hellfire Club. Andy Perfetti's
Hmm.
basement studio with that too. So we did some things towards the end of the band over there too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened? Just kind of fizzled out, went your separate ways? I mean, 14 years is a long time for anyone.
Right. Yeah, and I think just some life things happened at that point that it just kind of was the end of it. One
Hmm.
of our bass player, they had a baby and things like that. So I mean,
Hmm.
life stuff happened, and that was that. And again, it was no big thing as far as any big drama or anything like that. But all in all, it was a really good solid band, good solid kind of power trio. I've
Yeah.
always been a fan of those,
Mhm.
and yeah, it was a really good experience, and especially for that was my first band, we accomplished a lot. So
It sounds like it. Sounds
yeah,
like it.
very prolific.
Yeah, yeah. And putting an album out every 18 months, I mean, that's
Yeah,
a feat in itself. I mean, big bands, like that are at the top of their game don't even really do that often.
right,
Were
right.
they kind of full-length albums, more kind of EP style?
The majority were actually pretty close to full length. We had a couple of EPs that we had put together, and a couple of different projects too that were, in addition to the originals, we had one project we called Karaoke, where we actually invited in guest singers to sing our songs
Oh, okay.
and did that. So that was kind of a fun little thing.
Hmm.
But otherwise, it was all pretty much originals. We did one covers album, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So, we'd have the occasional off project too.
Hmm.
But yeah, a lot of it just good old songwriting. And like I said, our main guy was, so prolific
Hmm.
at writing new songs and putting them to the band. And
Hmm.
what was really cool about that is each person kind of contributing their own part and being able to write on the fly and figure out what made sense in terms of the music
Hmm.
and very collaborative.
Excellent, excellent. Now, is that kind of what you seek out in bands and music? Is that kind of collaboration? Right now, I'm
Yeah,
kind of speaking to Stardust Collective. They're definitely collaborators.
right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I think my heart will always be with the originals, just because you like being able to put your own spin on things
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
be able to interpret and see what feels right for that particular song.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the same thing goes with Stardust Collective. Aaron Tank, our main songwriter in chief,
Hmm.
with Stardust, he has a very unique style of writing.
Hmm.
So he will sometimes have an idea in his head of how he wants it to go, but there's a lot of interpretation, a lot of jamming out to kind of figure out what makes sense in terms of a song. And it's been very fun with this group of musicians as well,
Hmm.
seeing which avenue it takes. I come from a little bit harder, more rock background,
Okay.
where Aaron has a little bit more of a tinge of the folk and Americana.
Hmm.
And Eric Bong, our bass player, he's, kind of plays both sides of the coin.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting to see how those different styles kind of meld together and develop. It's been an interesting progress
Hmm.
of songs from, when we first started playing together to currently.
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful, Amy. Absolutely fabulous. And now, I said earlier you are a businesswoman as
Yep.
well, and that still falls into the creative process of things. You are a graphic designer by
Yep.
trade.
Yep.
How does that kind of fall into the workday and kind of the flow of things? You do run and operate your own business.
Correct. Right. Yeah. And, that is one of those things when you do own your own business, you're talking, it's not just the 8 to 5 like you used to do when you worked for somebody else.
Hmm.
So it's not only the work that you do, but also the running of the business, the networking that's involved to get out there and get new clients, customer care, and the back end of doing accounting and all that jazz too. So that's the part that you don't always think about when you go into business, but you get into it because you do what you love.
Hmm.
And for me, design, marketing, all of that has been kind of my passion. I started out, right out of college, working for local companies, doing that same kind of work in more of a corporate environment.
Hmm.
And finally struck up my own in 2008, which again was the Great Recession. So, if you can start a business then, you can start at any time.
Right,
Um,
right.
but, for me, it's just really kind of cool to see what you can come up with. Your client has a need and kind of working backwards from that as to what's the right, um, what kind of campaign, what kind of media you choose,
Hmm.
all of that
Hmm.
to make it work for.
Yeah, yeah. And I recently saw some of your work, actually with one of Aaron Tank's kind of side projects, The Vessel.
Oh, yep.
And I really enjoyed the colors and the layers that you put on the front cover of that. That
Oh,
was
thank you.
absolutely fabulous. Now, has graphic design always kind of been a calling for you? I mean, not just striking out on your own, but I mean that kind of realm of the other side of creativity, but a little bit more corporate at times.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, because I think, when you think back to being a kid, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up?
Mhm.
And I, thought of some very different things. I had, debate about, oh, should I do law? Should I do psychology? Or should I
Mhm.
go into advertising? And that was kind of the thing at that point in time. Everybody said advertising.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so that was to me the right path because the things that I loved to do most were draw and do art and write and come up with silly things,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that seemed to me like the best career path for actually doing the things that I love to do and actually get paid for it.
Okay.
So I mean, there is that crass, commercial end of it, of course, but
Mhm.
ultimately I feel good about the work that I do.
Mhm.
And, especially right now, I focus mostly on smaller businesses
Okay.
so that you're actually able to make a real impact and not helping, a CEO get a third vacation home. You're helping a mom and pop shop, pay for
Mhm.
dance lessons for their kid or pay the
Oh,
mortgage or, that kind of thing.
right,
So
right. Mhm.
um, you can use your powers for good. So,
All right, excellent, excellent. And now, Amy, prior to you said that you were kind of doing the 9 to 5 kind of thing,
yep.
and then back in 2008, you struck out on your own to open your own business. Was that a long time coming? I mean, have you always thought that you could be your own boss, or was it a slow progression to that point?
Well, it was kind of a random and in some ways kind of a necessity. I had worked for one corporation for 8.5 years and another one for 3.5. And there were some things that shifted around that our office was being closed locally.
Oh,
And yeah, so with that, it's like, okay, what do you do? Do you start looking around and work for another corporation or do you start your own thing?
mm-hmm.
So, I had never really thought that that was going to be my path, especially at that point in life. Because I just freelance work on the side for fun, fun money, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So, but with that scenario there, it was a case where, you know, in the corporate world, I always felt like a number.
Okay.
And with that, you're always beholden to this other entity.
Hmm.
So the decision to go out on my own, it actually allowed me to have some control over my universe. It's like, you work as hard as you want to, you get out of it what you put into it, and you can choose who you work with. So for that, it's been incredibly liberating to be able to, go down your own path and actually do what you like to do and feel
Right.
good about it.
Hmm. And now, Amy, we had actually sat down for dinner,
Yeah.
not that long ago, over the winter, and we had
Yeah.
actually talked about this very subject, kind of
Yep.
striking out on your own and being, for being kind of an entrepreneur. But there's a lot more that goes into business ownership and working for yourself than getting up and saying, okay, what am I going to do today?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is an understatement.
Yes, yes. I actually had the privilege to talk to the Joneses. They are down in Los Angeles, California, and they started their own health company.
Sure.
So it's a husband and wife, but they said the biggest hurdle that they both had to overcome was the financial side of things, chasing after clientele,
Right.
and really kind of figuring out that because you not only have these bills, like rent and your car payment or whatnot, but now you also have the business bills as well. And I mean, if you
Right.
work out your own home, it's a little bit different, but it's still all there. Was that a really big challenge for you to kind of
Well,
rope that in?
it, it definitely was a bit of a scary thing. I won't lie about that.
Hmm.
Because again, you're basically starting from scratch.
Hmm.
And after you've been working for a while, you're used to paid vacation and you're used to time off and you're used to having a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So when you first start out, yeah, it's very, very humbling because you're starting over and it is your sole responsibility to get the money in to pay your bills.
Hmm.
So, I was fortunate when I decided to start mine that I had, like 2 months of severance pay. So I used that for a lot of my research so that I did, classes with the Center for Economic Development, did a lot of legwork, putting out feelers to, past contacts, people that I've done work with, people that were my colleagues from past jobs, and trying to lay that foundation. But again, when you start out, you have to be hustling all the time to get those clients in, because they don't know you exist. So you have to, work extra hard. And, the concept of networking, honestly, that is what makes the biggest difference in building those relationships with people who will become your future clients, your future partners and things, your support network in a lot of ways. And with that, they don't teach you about networking in school, so you really have to put yourself out there and learn a lot on the fly, which as an introverted type person, that's scary. It's super scary.
Well, you did it very well. And yes, I've heard that phrase before, that networking is key. And
Oh, it is.
yeah, they don't teach you that in school or in college for that matter.
No.
They don't really teach you what goes on in the real world and how to kind of make these things happen for yourself and for others
Right.
as well. So you launched this back in 2008. What else was kind of going on in your mind? Your job was kind of coming to a close. You jumped off the dock and decided to go for a swim, and now here you are in 2020. How's the job been treating you so far? I mean, were there ever points in time where you just said, maybe I should throw in the towel?
I mean, knock on wood, actually, no. There's times that it's not easy. And there's times where, especially like in the current situation we're in now, with the health crisis, it would be way easier to just collect a paycheck. But ultimately, I really like being my own boss. And when you're a certain type of person that, you like a certain amount of control, we won't hide that, but it's one of those things that it's hard. But for me, once I set my mind to it, it's like, failure is really not an option. It's one of those things that I'm going to put everything I have into it. And hopefully, knock on wood, the cycle continues. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be, growing steadily each year. I'll never be a millionaire by any stretch, but I can pay my bills. And I was able to start paying my bills within the first, 6 months of doing it.
Wow.
So I mean, for that, I think, I don't have designs on being the next greatest thing or anything grand like that. It's more just being able to do what I love. And as long as I'm able to do that and I'm still bringing, joy and satisfaction out of it, I'm good,
Amy, that's absolutely wonderful. I mean, usually when people start out on their own, they usually don't collect a paycheck until a year into it or so.
Yeah.
That's excellent. But that also speaks to the kind of work that you do as well.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of it. And again, I'm lucky that I can work from home. And as far as overhead is concerned, I've got a very simple business. As long as my computer and software are up to date and my internet and cell phone are working, I can work from anywhere, anytime. So for that part, I'm very fortunate. I don't need to have a building or staff, that kind of thing.
Right.
But with that said, I mean, I try to be very, conservative on how I do things, not overextend yourself, and just try to, be smart about who you connect with. And sometimes the really happy divine accidents happen, and you never know when you're going to meet your next best client. So that's part of what keeps it interesting too. So.
Yeah, good, excellent. And now, Amy, when you go into a project, I mean, you're just not. Well, I mean, you're not completely limited to just graphic design, not just cover art. I mean, you do websites, and like I said earlier, you did Aaron Tank's cover of his magazine. What else kind of falls into the realm of Amy Ugstad, graphic designer?
Right. Well, in a lot of ways too, I kind of think of myself based, on the skills that I have and the services I can provide as kind of a one-person ad agency. Because beyond design, I could do all your logos and branding and brochures and business cards and all that good stuff. I do approach things from a more marketing perspective.
Okay.
Where I think a lot of designers, sometimes they can do beautiful, beautiful work. but they don't always think about it in terms of how effective it will be in terms of marketing. So I think that is something that kind of sets me apart, that, I'm able to think from that part of your brain, as well as, being able to write. I can write the ad copy, I can design the ad, I can, figure out what magazines it needs to be in for placement. So it's being able to take it that step further and have that full service approach. So, for some of my best clients, they started with me. We did a full branding, for their business, and we do all of the print materials. We do their websites, social media, you name it, we do it. Those are my favorite kind of people to work with, because then we've got that nice consistency for them, which, in turn serves them much better as well.
Excellent, excellent. And now, Amy, do you focus just more on local businesses here in Duluth, or how far is your reach?
Yeah, my biggest clients are mostly local, but I do actually work nationwide. I do a lot of work in the promotional products industry, and work with one company that has reps located all over the country, even Puerto Rico too. So I can technically work with anyone anywhere, as long as we can connect via email, phone. Now Zoom has gotten so popular, so there are ways to do it. So you're not limited by boundaries.
Right. And now with the global health crisis going on, a lot more people are working from home, but it sounds like you've already got that in the bag, so you're already set.
yeah, that it really hasn't rocked my world all that much, and I'm not exactly sure what that says about me, but the working from home part has been cool. That hasn't changed at all. The only thing that's really changed is some of my businesses that I work for are either slow or closed, and just starting to catch back. So that's been a bit of a change. Being a lot quieter than I normally am. I'm usually working a lot of long hours and that, and
right.
So the blessing in that has been achieving a little bit of balance, so that you're not working till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So that's been good. But, in terms of it's a different set of rules, and of course the whole crisis thing. I miss being able to go and do band practice, play gigs, and that kind of thing. So that honestly, the music side is what's I'm at where I'm feeling my pain.
Right. I hear you there.
Yep,
Loud.
I'm sure.
Loud and clear.
Yep, so, we're in the same boat.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like when you go into a project, or when you're going to take on a project, you really want to kind of hit it from all different angles, have kind of a constant message across the board. But it's almost like you're trying to put a story behind what you're doing, rather than, throwing a couple images together and, handing it off to the person.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's honestly the big trend right now in marketing is storytelling. And whether it be, just a simple graphic, or it be a print piece, or, an ad, or something else, you want to have each piece have a goal and a message in mind, so that it's actually hopefully communicating to who you want to communicate to. Every business has a different audience they're trying to attract, and trying to get in the head of that potential, customer that they want. What's going to be attractive to them, and what's going to speak to them, so that they choose to, patronize that business. Right. So there's, that allows me to kind of fulfill that little psychological bit that I toyed with as a kid as well.
Perfect. Excellent. So your child self is now coming into your adult self, and they're married and happy together.
Right, exactly. The inner child, screams with joy every once in a while. So.
Perfect.
It's a concept.
Now, I have heard it said, and hopefully you can shed some light on this, that, when you're working for yourself, you can often fall into the trap of sleeping in, or getting to a project later in the day, or sometimes not at all. Was that a difficult process or habit to get into when you kind of launched yourself into working from home?
Most of the time, actually, no, because I think with me, when I first started, I was so scared of failure, and you're so conditioned by the corporate 8 to 5 or whatever that is, that you're used to getting up, and you're used to doing this one, this, that, and the other thing, and shutting down at 5. So for that part of it, the motivation of it really hasn't been that big of an issue.
Okay.
I mean, granted, you have your days where maybe you're working on something and you're just not feeling it. You're hitting that brick wall, creatively. So, yeah, there are times when you're more motivated than others, but, the majority of times I've always been kind of a taskmaster. So it's like, if I know I have to do something, I'm going to be up and doing it, I'm more of a night person than a morning person, but if I have to be to a meeting at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be there, or if and the blessing too is that I can just, work in my pajamas if I had to. So it's like, if I wake up at 8:01, I can have my computer on and be working. So that part, makes that curve a lot shorter too.
Right. And I've also heard and seen that a lot more people are working in their pajamas as well. So
Oh yeah,
you're just ahead of the curve, Amy.
exactly. It's a major perk. You got to do it.
Right. Although something should be said for staying in your pajamas all day long, though.
Well, you know, it depends on the day. I'm not going to lie that doesn't happen more often than it should, but
I didn't need to know that. I'm kidding.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, we'll leave it at that. We won't go further, but
All right, sounds good, Amy. And now to kind of jump back into the musician side of
yeah,
things, you've been one since the '90s. You've always kind of fell into the drummer side of things. How has the music scene kind of changed from the '90s up until now? I mean, we're talking a couple decades here, but
right. It's actually changed a lot. I think especially when you come from the more rock side of things,
okay.
it's become harder. I mean, there's a lot fewer rock bands
Mm.
locally than there were before.
Mhm.
And, the venues have changed significantly too, as far as what they even want in terms of a band to perform. You see a lot more acoustic performers with one or two people, that kind of a thing. A lot of venues like that because it's quieter and that kind of thing. And I get it. I totally do in terms of, what their customer experience is like. But
Mhm.
um, that part is weird. I mean, there's not as many places to play. I know, like with I was playing with Monster Mob,
Mm.
and that was heavy horror themed rock and punk and that kind of deal, and it became harder and harder to find good places to play that actually are into that kind of music.
Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in some ways, the theme has kind of thinned out a little bit. It's gone a lot lighter than it used to be, maybe.
Mm.
Or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No. I've definitely noticed a change here in Duluth as well.
Yeah.
I've noticed a shift. I mean, when I started going out to shows and things like that back in 2008, actually,
Yep.
there
Yeah.
definitely was a really big presence of more kind of rock, kind of punk,
Yep.
kind of those shows. But then on the other side of that coin, you had the acoustic player playing brunch the next day.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I wouldn't even go as far as saying, that rock has kind of faded. It definitely has. But even the kind of acoustic shows have as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just an overarching change that's happening here and other places as well, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a sign of the times. I'm not sure. And now with the global health crisis, well, everybody's online. So
Right. Right. Well, and it'll be interesting to see what happens after.
Mhm.
You've got a lot of people, which I mean, it's encouraging to see those who are saying, "Oh, I miss going to see music."
Mhm.
Um, and the struggle for any local band is, trying to get butts and seats.
Right.
So, it would be nice that when things do reopen up, people remember that and come out to a show.
Mhm.
It's a natural progression as you get older. You go out less, and I get it. But with that said, there's still that place that nothing can beat a live performance, whether it's a rock band, a cover band, or whatever. It's or acoustic performance for that matter too.
Mm.
There's just something that you get by being there that you're missing when you're watching it on a video or just listening outright.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
a
Right.
different thing.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Although I have been to a lot of shows lately
Oh yeah.
from
Yep.
the comfort of my living room. So, I'm not missing out per se.
Right. Yeah.
There is a different. It's definitely different.
Yeah.
Definitely
Oh,
different.
definitely.
You
Yeah.
can't
It's
strike up a conversation with the drummer. So.
right. Yeah, and it's just a different energy. I mean,
Mhm.
the homebody introvert in me loves having all of that just on my computer screen, but then
Yeah.
sometimes it pushes you outward, to actually
Mhm.
go to a show and to, interact with the crowd and kind of watch. I love watching
Mhm.
how performances go down and how the crowd reacts and all those different pieces.
Uh-huh.
And, that part to me is part of the allure of it, just kind of seeing how everybody interacts with the music and
Mm.
the
Mhm.
vibe they bring.
Yeah, yeah. And now, Amy, on that light, I mean, do you really kind of play to the audience? I mean, I've heard it said that when you hit the stage, you're playing to the audience basically.
Right,
And, you kind of gotta change a little bit with the flow of the audience. If the audience is
right.
really gel into maybe a more kind of slower song, you throw a couple more slow songs in there. Now, is that something that you kind of adhere to? Realizing that you're the drummer, but
Right.
you are the backbone of the band.
Yeah, and I guess that's it. It kind of depends on the group that you're with.
Okay.
With the original groups, it depends on honestly what kind of material you have. The cover band, you can really dig deeper and play to the audience better.
Hmm.
As to again, if they're dancing to a more high energy number, you throw another one in and you keep them going.
Hmm.
And that's on the part of the band collectively to okay, call up the right song and let's go. Where with the originals, sometimes that can be a trickier thing if again, depending on the number of songs you've got to go from. Sometimes you don't have more than a couple ballads or slow ones.
Hmm.
So you're kind of up a creek there. But usually, in your preparation for that gig, you try to be mindful of where am I playing. Am I playing at theaters, or am I playing at RT Quinlan's, or am I playing? What kind of a venue is it? And what type of people usually show up for that kind of gig.
Right, right.
So
And now, Amy, besides being in Stardust Collective, you are also in another band, and it's actually with Corey from Monster Mob, and it's also with Susie Q as well.
correct. Yep. We've got a project called Darling Danger, and it's a
Darling
little bit
Danger, okay.
Darling Danger. Yep. And it's a little bit of a departure from what a lot of us, because the majority of the work that we've done has all been originals, and this is actually a cover project.
Very cool.
So yeah, so what we're doing is we're taking, we've all got fairly diverse musical tastes. So we're bringing in some different kinds of covers that you don't hear in the bars every weekend, or at least ever used to. And just, having some fun with it and bringing in some different influences and
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
what we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, and Amy, you had said that you had played with Corey previously in Monster Mob a couple times, and I've interviewed Susie before on the show, and she's a kind of a hip hop blues artist. So how do those two kind of come together? Realizing that you guys are doing cover music.
Right, right. Well, it is a bit different, but actually that makes it kind of fun because you've got a really diverse playlist.
Hmm.
So we've got, musically, we're covering things that are, pretty heavy into the 90s, alternative, early 2000s, that kind of thing, but bringing it way back and doing some interesting things with some tunes from even the late 60s and 70s and 80s, things like that, just popping in, with rock, pop, alternative,
Hmm.
some really kind of funky things. So it's actually working quite well to have that different influence involved in diversifying, and always fun to have a female vocalist.
Hmm.
And Susie definitely has always had her own style with that, so that's kind of fun to
Yes.
see how that's developed as well.
Yeah, she's definitely a powerhouse.
Yep, for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful, Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, Amy, we talked a bit about networking and kind of how that perpetuates everything forward, not only for your graphic design business, but your musicianship as
Oh,
well. Have you
right.
ever married the two? Have you ever been out to a show and saw somebody in the crowd and said, hey, I do graphic design as well?
Well, a lot of times it sometimes comes up with just conversation.
Okay.
As the designer in the group, I've always, by default, ended up doing a fair amount of posters and CD covers and things like that for the bands that I was in. But then also, other musicians too. I've done things for others, like Brian Marie, for example. I've done a number of her CD albums, those kind of covers, as well as some posters and things. And she kind of mixes it up with different artists as well. So with that, once you kind of get into the community, it gets known, with certain things. I, might run in a little different circle just because I'm a little older than the average band around here. But so there's that. But other than that, it can be a source for, work as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Amy, if somebody's interested in getting hold of you or seeing the previous work that you've done, how can they do that?
Yeah, probably the best way is to connect with me on Facebook.
Okay.
And either, look for me personally, or else my business page is One Creative. And that has, some samples of my work. I'm terrible. I'm kind of like the plumber with the leaky faucet, that I'm really good at promoting other people, but not so good at promoting myself. So, I need to rebuild my website and all that good stuff. But Facebook is a great way to connect, and I'm always happy to answer questions and just talk about, design, music, whatever.
Yeah. Hear the other person's idea and see if you want to go from there, right?
Absolutely. Right on. Well, and that's the whole thing. It is totally, a partnership with them. You want to get to know what people need and what they want. And you work backwards. So.
Right. And as a photographer myself, I can completely attest to that,
Oh, exactly.
There are some people that, for lack of a better term, they want the world. And
yep.
there's going to be a difference between what you're seeing on a Hollywood set compared to what I can do for you in an afternoon. So.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Managing expectations, that's a completely different conversation there.
Well, since we hit it, why don't we go into it a little bit, if you've got the time?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. Managing expectations. I enjoy that phrase. I don't think I've heard it said like that, but you hit the nail on the head.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that's the whole thing, because especially when you're in a more artistic field, it's very subjective. Everybody has different things that they're attracted to, whether it be in different styles, different colors, different, aesthetics. So part of it, is really that communication aspect of it, as to trying to understand what people are into, and breaking that sometimes from what they are into as the business owner or the project manager, versus what their clients might be into. Because sometimes you have to check yourself at the door, as to what you personally like versus what might actually work best for the type of client you're trying to attract. So that's kind of a first, little step for a lot of people, that it's hard to, get them past that.
Okay. Do you have any kind of tips or tricks that you use or that you've learned to use throughout the years? Kind of managing people's expectations, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is honestly asking good questions, because I usually will start out every project asking a lot of questions as far as, what are their goals? What do you like? What do you dislike? When I'm doing a branding, I ask them to send me, copies of logos that they like and things that they dislike. So that way we can kind of narrow down what kind of a vibe they're going for. And then I can offer back, recommendations as to, okay, I see you like this. And, your client over here, like, say, for lack of a better thing, maybe you have a very funky style, but you're trying to attract a more conservative client. The two might not mesh. So it's kind of getting that happy medium of something that is going to work for the client and work for their potential customer, and making the two, gel. So that's one big thing, questions, communication, I'll send people drafts of things so that they can review it and tweak and tune, and, so that way everybody's on board for every step of the process, versus just like, oh, here you go, there's your logo, now I'm out of here. It doesn't work that way,
Okay. So you're definitely a very kind of hands-on person, and you want the owner or the person that's hiring you out to be hands-on as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, honestly, those are the people that I work with the best. They don't have to micromanage me by any means. For a lot of people, they tell me what they need. I do it. I get in, I get out. When they need something again, they pick up the phone. So it doesn't have to be, a big cumbersome process by any means. But those that usually, we achieve the best results are able to, verbalize what do they want? What are they looking for? And then, be able to take suggestions and then we kind of work together to get there. So that part for me is the most fun, when you can kind of meld those two expertise because they know their business, they know their customers that they want. It's my job to help them get there, in the marketing realm. So
yeah, Amy, I think you used the term showcasing.
Right. Yeah. Yep. It's exactly it, because we all get into business because we're good at one thing. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily good at marketing or accounting and that kind of thing. So if you can take what they're really good at and, as you just said, showcase it to their potential client, it's that much more effective than just kind of throwing something at the wall and seeing if it sticks.
Right. Very true, Amy. Very true. And now, like I said earlier, if somebody's interested in getting in touch with you, reach out to you on Facebook, but then you also have a website as well.
I do, yeah. And that's oneupcreative.net. And actually, email is amy@oneupcreative.net. So they can always get me that way too. Email, whatever. We're digital. We're good.
All right. Sounds good. Maybe somebody will send you a tweet next.
Well, they can, and that would be fine. There's certain tweets I don't want, but we won't even go in there in that either. So
yes. I find myself asking myself really some days, why do I even have a Twitter? It's not like I really do anything on it, but
no, and sadly, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. It's like I signed up for an account, and if somebody notifies me there, I'll get it. It hasn't been my preferred medium. So.
Right. All right. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me and the wider world about being a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and a musician all in one.
Well, thank you so much. No, it was a fun chat. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, of course. Have a great day, Amy, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.